it's Hannah here at Velmatique Library, ready for another teen story time. So March is Women's History Month, and we've all decided to read books that have a female protagonist or by a female author or feature some historical female figure that's awesome again. I have decided to read Trickster's Choice by Tamora Pierce, featuring a female protagonist and, of course, by a female author. So this is a sequel of sorts to the Lioness Quartet books by Tamora Pierce. Those books feature Alana, the first female knight. She actually has to masquerade as a man in order to become a knight, and then later becomes a celebrated hero. And these books are about her daughter Allie, who is almost grown up, and she's kind of listless because her mother is the celebrated king's champion, the lioness, and her dad is an accomplished spy master, and she doesn't really know what she's going to do with herself. So let's read some Trickster's Choice. The day after her father's departure, Allie heard the horn calls that signaled the arrival of a friendly ship in the cove. Gently, she set aside the book she was reading and went into the main hall, then went out through the open front door. Whatever she had expected, the scene in the inner courtyard was not it. Hostlers gently led her mother's warhorse Darkmoon toward the stable. The big gelding limped, fairing his left hind leg. Allie eyed the rest of the arrivals. 10 swoop armsmen who had gone north with her mother the year before helped the servants to unload their pack horses before taking them to the stable. The horses looked thin and salt-flecked, as if they'd been at sea. The men-at-arms looked much the same. So did Allie's mother. Alana of Pirate Swoop and Barony Olau, King's champion, watched Darkmoon as he was led away. The lioness wore loose, salt-stained buckskin. There was salt in her copper hair, and she had lost more weight than the men. Allie knew her mother hated ships. She would have been sick throughout the voyage. Allie trotted down the steps and kissed her mother's thin cheek. "What brings you here so unexpectedly?" asked Allie. "Is Darkmoon all right?" Her mother looked up at her. Even wearing boots, she was slightly shorter than her daughter. Fine lines framed the lioness's famous purple eyes and her mouth, marks of long weeks in the open air, summer and winter. There were a few white strands in her mother's shoulder-length copper hair that Allie could not remember seeing before. "He pulled a tendon," Alana replied wearily. "Our horse healers did their best with him, but he needs rest. His Majesty gave us a month's leave." "Where's your father?" "Off," replied Allie. It was the family's code phrase that meant her father George was on spy master's business. "He should be back soon. It was just a quick trip to Port Kane." Her mother nodded, understanding, and gave Allie a brief hug. "Why didn't Aunt Dane heal Darkmoon?" Allie demanded. Dane, the wild mage, spoke with and healed animals as easily as she took their shapes. "Your aunt is having a baby shapeshifter within the month," replied her mother, as the men carried her packs into the castle. "If she doesn't change below the waist whenever the child does, it might kick its way out of her womb." Alana shuddered. It wasn't even worth asking her, not to mention it made me queasy to see her go from bear to donkey to fish every now and then while her upper half remains the same. "Darkmoon will be fine with rest." She walked towards the castle steps, limping slightly. "What happened to you?" Allie demanded, keeping pace. "You're hobbling like—" She'd been about to say, "You're old," but her throat closed up. That wasn't so. 42 was not old, or at least not that old. "I took a wound to the thigh last autumn," Alana said tersely. "It troubles me some yet." "But you're up to your ears in healers," Allie protested. "You're one yourself." Alana scowled. "When you've been healed as much as I have, you develop a certain resistance. You know that, or you should. What have you done to your hair?" Allie tossed her head. "It's the latest fashion in chorus," she informed her mother. "It's the height of sophistication." "It's as sophisticated as a blueberry," retorted Alana. "Aren't you a little old for this kind of thing?" "Why? It's fun and it washes out. It's not like the world revolves around my hair, Mother," Allie said sharply. Why did this always happen? Home not even half a day and her mother had already found something to criticize about her. "Fun," Alana said, her voice dry. "There ought to be more to your life than fun at 16. Allie rolled her eyes. "Someone has to enjoy themselves around here," she pointed out. "It certainly isn't you, forever writing here and there for serious work. You're always so grim." "You're 16, retorted Alana. "When I was your age, I was 2 years from earning my shield. I knew what I wanted for my life. I knew the work I wanted to do." "Mother, please," cried Allie. They hadn't seen each other for a year, but already they had returned to the last conversation they'd had before Alana left. Must you be so obsessed? I know all of this already. When you were my age, you killed 10 giants armed only with a stick and a handful of pebbles. Then you went on to fly through the air on a winged steed to return with the Dominion jewel in your pocket and the most beautiful princess in all the world for your king to marry. I'm not you. If you were here more, you might have seen that much for yourself. She wished she hadn't made the accusation. But if anyone could make Allie lose control over her tongue, it was her mother. Guilt pinched the girl as Alana's shoulders slumped. That's not what I meant, Alana said. That's not what I want. At least it would have been nice to have you do as I did, as far as getting your shield is concerned, anyway. But the whole point to doing as I did was so you could do something else if you wanted to. It's just that you don't seem to want to do anything. She massaged one of her shoulders, watching her daughter. Look, hair is hair, I suppose. If you want it blue or green or leopard spotted, who am I to say what's fit for a girl? She walked into the castle. Allie turned to see the hostlers and men-at-arms regarding her with reproach. She's not your mother, she told them. You try being the daughter of a legend. It's a great deal of work. Allie didn't expect to see Alana at the supper table that night, but the servants did. A second place had been laid, and Alana was already seated when Allie entered the smaller family dining room. My first solid meal in days, Alana informed her daughter as Allie took her seat. I threw up all the way here on that cursed ship. It's still too windy to ride? Asked Allie, accepting a bowl of oysters and stew from a maid. Her mother had already begun to eat. When she'd emptied her mouth, she replied, Not if I didn't mind getting here by the time I'm supposed to be back at Farsland. She ate with quick, efficient movements. Seasick or no, the boat was faster. It's going to be a long summer, I admit. I will be the better for some time here. Then King Magar means to fight on, despite losing his killing devices, Allie inquired. Alana mopped out her bowl with a crust of bread. He's still got his armies and his ship captains. If all there was to Magar was that disgusting mage of his, we'd have beaten him like a drum last year. Could we not talk about the war? I've done nothing else for months. Allie stifled a sigh. There were so few subjects she could safely discuss with her mother, unless it had been over a year since their last talk, and that time she'd honestly tried to find something to do that would please her father, without success. Perhaps she had gone at it the wrong way. It had never occurred to her before to enlist her mother's help. You know what you were saying before, Mother? She asked as the maid set a roasted duck between them. Alana carved it briskly, serving herself and Allie, while Allie dished up the fried onion pickle that went with the duck. I barely remember my own name at the moment, Alana replied. What did I say before? That I needed to find work. Allie arranged her onions in a design on her plate. As it happens, there is work I like, work I'm good at. And it's as important as warrior's work. I think you'd be the first to say as much. Alana looked up from her plate, her purple eyes glinting with suspicion. Out with it, Allie, she ordered. You know I have little patience for dancing around a thing. What's as important as a warrior's work? Allie put down her knife and folded her hands in her lap, where her mother couldn't see them. Making sure the proper casual spirit was in her voice and face, she said, I would like to serve the realm as a field agent. With the war making a hash of things, I bet I could make my way into Scanra. We need more agents there, or Gala, or Toussaint. We're about to lose one of our Toussaint folk. Well, not lose, God's willing. She made the star-shaped sign against evil on her chest. But we have to pull him out of Toussaint, and we'll have to replace him. Alana set down her knife so hard that it clacked as it struck her plate. Absolutely not, she snapped. Her face was dead white. Her eyes burned as brightly as the magical ember-like stone she always wore around her neck. Allie leaned back in the chair, startled by Alana's vehemence. I beg your pardon, she asked politely, buying time until she figured out what she'd said wrong this time. No daughter of mine will be a spy. Alana's tone made the word spy into a curse. But Da's a spy, Allie pointed out, shocked. Her mother fingered the glowing stone at her throat and replied slowly, Your father is a unique man with unique talents. They are put to better use in the service of the realm than in his old way of life. I'm grateful for that. He also has people of like mind, training, and background to help him in what he does. People better suited than his daughter. You're trying to say Da's no noble, no blue bud of Trebond, Allie said, finding the point that her mother's tiptoed around. You're trying to say spying is not a noble's work. But Grand Da is a spy too. What about him? Your grandfather distills the information your agents gather. He serves as the visible spy master so your father may work undisturbed, said Alana. That's different. You wanted me to have work that means something to me, protested Allie. Not this work, Allie Ann. I have to endure it when your father does it. I don't have to accept it from you. Alana sighed and leaned back in her chair. Spying is not fun, Allie. It means nasty work. One misstep will get you killed. If you were hoping I'd talk your father around, you were mistaken. But that's what I want, cried Allie, frustrated. You're always after me to do something with my life. You tell me, make a decision. And I have. I help Dal with it all the time, and nobody objects. Then I should have done so, Alana said, and I should have done it years ago. You're right. I was never around for your growing up. She pushed her chair back from the table. While I'm here, I'll try to make up for it a little. We'll use our wits, see what we can do. Wincing, she got to her feet and walked past Allie. She stopped, hesitated, then rested a hand on Allie's shoulder. I've been a bad mother to you, Allie, but perhaps I can help you find your way at least. She took her hand and walked stiffly out of the room. The maid pursued her after giving Allie an annoyed stare to remind Alana that she barely had anything to eat. Allie stared at the goblet beyond her plate. She knew that tone in her mother's voice, the one that had crept in as Alana spoke of Allie finding her way. Allie was to be her current project. Every time she was at home, Alana seemed to require a task, something to keep her hands busy until her next summons to kill a giant, round up outlaws, fight a noble who challenged the crown's judgment, or take part in a war. During her last day, she had gone over every inch of the swoop's walls with masons, remortaring stones and building the walls higher by a full yard. The household had spent weeks cleaning up stone dust after she left. Allie had no interest in being a project, liking herself as she was. Frowning, she considered her choices as she drummed her fingers lightly on the table. She could stay and have her mother talk at her until Da returned. Then she could sit about decoding reports by herself, feeling underfoot and alone until her parents remembered there were other people in the world. It had happened before. The prospect was not enticing. Her parents needed time to themselves. As it was, George would probably have to visit the spy landfall, especially if the man was tucked away in a secret room for safety. It also occurred to Allie that she might not like the result when Da learned she had tried to enlist her mother's help. It was very hard to make Da angry, but that might just do it. They deserve time alone together, Allie told herself virtuously. I'll give it to them. She got up from the table and went to her father's office. If she applied herself, she could finish the rest of the correspondence that evening and leave her father with nothing to distract him when he returned. In the morning, she would sail her boat, the Cub, down the coast to Port Lagan. She would even leave a note so that her parents wouldn't worry. She often sailed alone, and winter in the south had been fairly mild. The sea might be a little rough, but she could handle it. If the weather turned bad, she would take shelter with the dozens of families she knew along the coast, and it was early enough in the year that pirates wouldn't have started their raids yet. She would sail to Port Lagan, visit Lord Imra and his tiny vivid wife, and give her parents the time alone that they deserved. She would also avoid being turned into her mother's project. Alana's energy was a fearsome thing. A few days before her mother left for the north, Allie would return to bid her farewell. If a tiny voice whispered at the back of her brain that she was running away, Allie ignored it. Her plan was really for everyone's good. She finished the decoding and paperwork, leaving her summaries in a neat stack on her father's desk. That night she packed a small trunk. As the sun first drew a silver line along the horizon, she carried it down to the Cub. By the time the sun was clear of coastal hills, Allie was plowing through the waves, shivering a little in her coat. She imagined the result when her mother found her note on the dining room table. If her mother's past reactions were any indication, she would curse the air blue that Allie had dodged her plans. Then Da would return. Allie's parents would bill and coo like turtle doves for 3 weeks, and by the time Allie returned from Port Lagan, both of them would be in a better frame of mind, ready to welcome their only girl child. Allie liked it. This was a good plan. For 2 days, she enjoyed her sail and the solitude. Shortly after dawn on her third day, she rounded Griffin Point, and she found she had miscalculated. A clutch of pirate ships, their captains not aware that the raiding season had yet to begin, had destroyed the town that lined Griffin Cove. Allie tried to turn the Cub, but the wind was against her. They surrounded her before she could get her ship out of the cove. By mid-morning, a mage was stitching a leather slave collar around her neck. It would tighten mercilessly if she tried to escape beyond the range of the mage who held its magical key. The captain of the ship that had sunk her beloved Cub watched as the mage finished the collar. I want her head shaved, he snapped. Nobody's going to buy a blue-haired slave. And that's some of Trickster's Choice. Check it out from the library if you want to see how it ends.